So I remember this old joke because we are in the midst of all these graduations, and I see the signs everywhere and the noise and the celebrations, which is great. That's great to see. So it reminded me to this story of this kid who graduated from high school. And he graduated with honors. He thought he was the smartest kid in town. So his grandfather wanted to do something different with him. And so he invited his grandson, this smart kid, to go with him camping. So maybe, the contact with nature is going to be good. So they arranged this quality time to bond between grandfather and grandson. So they go, they put together the tent, and they have a nice dinner, and they go to bed. In the middle of the night, the grandfather wake up his grandson and said to him, "Look at the sky. What do you see?" He said, "I see stars." "What is that telling you?" And the kid, he's the smartest kid in town, right? So he said, "Well, astronomically, it's telling me that there are millions of galaxies and potentially billions of planets. Now, astrologically, it's telling me that Saturn is in Leo. Horologically, it's telling me that it's about 3:15 a.m. Now, theologically, it's telling me that there is a creator. And meteorologically, it's telling me that tomorrow is going to be a nice day." So he looks at his grandfather and said, "What is that telling you, old man?" The grandfather looked at the kid and said, "It's telling me that somebody has stolen our tent." So, I want to talk to you today about I need to understand. That is the title for today's sermon. I need to understand. And you see, I was thinking that whatever we are in life, sometimes we have to learn to be grateful for whatever we are, even if we cannot understand everything that is going on. And that is something that is really difficult, because I believe that we human beings, we have this need to understand everything that is in front of us, everything that is in our lives, everything happening in the world. We need to understand. We have that urge. But the problem is that many times we get into the trap of not being able to be happy, or not being able to enjoy life, or not being able to find joy in life until we fully understand everything that is happening to us. So, and I think it's a very difficult challenge, because we all know that there are many things in life that perhaps we will never, ever understand. Sometimes we get blessed, and we do finally understand many of the things that happen. But we have to learn to live with the fact that many times we will never fully understand, at least not in this life, everything that is happening to us. And this week's Parsha is giving us a hint that this is something that it was intended this way by God. The Parsha is called Chukat. The word Chukat in Hebrew, ordinance, it's one of the types of mitzvot, one of the types of commandments that God gave us. In fact, the rabbis will explain that they are mainly, because there are some subcategories, but I don't want to get into too many details this morning. There are mainly two main categories of commandments, of mitzvot. You have the chukim, and you have the mishpatim. So, the mishpatim, let me start with that one, are the logical commandments that they are in the Torah. For example, if the Torah says, "You shall not murder," I hope I don't have to explain that to you, that you understand the logic behind that commandment, right? But there are many other commandments that it seems to have no logic at all. And we are still expected to observe those commandments. Why? Because they're in the Torah, even though we don't understand it. And I was thinking that perhaps that was the intention of the Torah. That was the intention of God, of giving us all these commandments that they have no apparent logic. It's not that we will never understand why we have to do it. Maybe sometimes we do. Sometimes we have our own reasons to understand why. But many times we have to continue developing and growing in our Jewish lives without understanding everything that we're supposed to do. And I was thinking that maybe if we can get that message, we will be better prepared in life whenever we have situations that we don't understand. And yet, we have to be able to continue moving forward. The most famous hawk in the Torah is in this parsha, actually. It's a topic that if you actually search for this week's parsha and you will go try to read comments of this parsha, virtually every rabbi tries to avoid that one, because it's very complex and many people think that there is nothing to learn from that. And it's the story of the red heifer, the red cow. I don't know if you ever heard about that one. It's something very weird. And it goes like this. The Torah presents many types of impurity. There were many things that will make you impure. It doesn't have anything to do with physical dirt or anything like that. It's like spiritual impurity. And you would say, okay, so what's the big deal? Well, in these days, it's not deal at all. But back in the day, if you were impure, you were not able to come to the sanctuary, to the temple, and to present your offerings. So it was a big deal. Because sometimes if you committed a sin or you wanted to be thankful to God or many other things, you have to go to the temple and you have to present a sacrifice. But if you were impure, you wouldn't be able to do that. If you got impure right before Shabbat, you wouldn't be able to attend the special sacrifices for Shabbat, for example, at the temple. And it was a big deal. So there is a way out in the Torah. Many of these sources of impurity will go away after a period of time, etc. There were many ways. But there was a faster way of getting rid of the impurity. What is that? The ritual of the red cow. And it goes like this. It said, if you find, because it's very rare, a perfectly red cow. But it has to be perfectly red cow. If you start having, little hairs of different colors, it's not valid. If you find it, then you bring it to the temple. And back in the day, you were probably a millionaire if you got one of those and you could sell the red cow because it was necessary. So you bring it to the temple. It will be burned to ashes. With those ashes, the priest will mix water with it, will prepare like a potion. And then if you were impure, you will come to the priest. The priest will sprinkle a little bit of this water mixed with the ashes of the red cow, and poof, just like that, you will be pure. I said, this is a very weird thing because it says that the people who were involved in the preparation of this mix, that they were pure people, by doing that became impure. Now, you go and tell me the logic behind that. Then you can understand why the rabbis try to avoid this, right? And when they say, what kind of message can I present to the congregation in the 21st century about this thing? But it was something that basically seems to have no logic. But it was very well known in the non-Jewish world that the Jews have this kind of weird commandment. To the point that it's in the Midrash Rabbah, there is an episode that there is a person who comes to talk to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And with this question, this person said, I can't get it out of my head. Rabbi, you have to explain to me because I cannot deal with this. Explain what is this kind of witchcraft that you do with this mixture. And the rabbi asked to this person. And I said, okay. He said, have you ever been possessed by a demon? And the person said, no. Well, have you ever heard about anybody being possessed by a demon? And the person said, yeah. What did they do? Well, they got some roots and they will make a little fire and the smoke will be blended with water and then the demon will leave that body. And the rabbi said, well, this is like that. This is when the spirit of impurity enters a body, then we have to sprinkle that body with this special mixture, and the spirit of impurity will leave the body. That person liked the answer and went out. And the funny thing is that now the students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who were listening to this conversation, they said, okay, Rabbi, come here. And he said, let me read this. He said, Rabbeinu, lazeh dachit bekaneh. He said, Rabbi, I know, this guy, you push him away with a straw. It means that we don't buy it. Try harder with us. Why do we have the ritual of the red cow? And the rabbi basically started to laugh. And he said, come on, guys. He said, a corpse does not make you impure, and a little mixture won't make you pure. The reason we do it is because it's in the Torah. So in other words, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had no clue why we had to do it. His students, they have no clue why we had to do it. And it looks like the students were really curious, and sometimes when we have this urge and this need to know, could be very dangerous, because it will stop us in the case that Midrash is presented, because in that case, that upset for not understanding something could interfere with their studies. And in our lives, the upset of not understanding why we have to go through certain situations or why things happen in the world could prevent us from reaching our divine destiny. And yes, we have so many things to be upset about. We look around in the world, we see violence, shootings, death, illness, and we ask, why this happened? Well, let me tell you something. We all have the urge to know, and to know is a good thing. This desire to know brought lots of good to the world. That's why we have so many inventions and so many good things in the world. But with that becomes an obsession that it will stop you from living your life, that it will stop you from enjoying your life, that it will stop you from finding joy. That is something that this parsha said we have to find ways to overcome that. Even more, this week's parsha has a similar episode with Moses. When God asked Moses to speak to the rock, and the rock will give water, what did Moses do? He hit the rock instead of speaking of the rock to give water. Why is that? Well, the rabbis bring some very interesting explanation about that. Because we do have episodes before in other parshiot in the past where Moses was actually asked by God to hit the rock, and then the rock will give water. And this time, God said to Moses, speak to the rock, and the rock will give water. The rabbi explained that Moses didn't understand why he has to speak to the rock right now, if in the past, every single time that water was involved, he has to use his staff to hit it. And he said that he was so upset by this thing that he couldn't understand. In fact, the Midrash said that Moses asked God, why do I have to speak to the rock instead of hitting of the rock? No answer. But God, tell me why. Every single time before I had to hit the rock, and now I have to talk to the rock? Why? No answer. Moses got so upset and so angry that he hit the rock anyway. So the rabbis explain how that obsession with having to know something could create anger and violence. And this is something that we all have to avoid. Moses was punished for that. God said, because of what you did, now you're not going to enter to the promised land. And that is a message that speaks to us. If we allow that need to know, to take control over our lives, we are going to miss our promised land. We are going to miss our divine mission. So this parsha, when it's talking about these little things that in Judaism that we don't understand, and we're supposed to do them anyway, it's a preparation for life. Because that's exactly the way life is. That there are many things that we will never understand. So, this is what I learned. It's good that we want to know, but sometimes we don't need to know. And we come to synagogue for many things. We come to synagogue and we pray to God. We come knowing what we want. But if your spiritual experience was a good one, you're going to go home really knowing what you need. You came knowing what you want. You go home knowing what you really need. And what we need to learn this Shabbat is that we don't need to know everything in order to be happy and in order to find joy in our lives. Because there are many things, as Moses reminded us, that we will never understand. And yet, we need to find ways to keep moving forward.